Welcome to today's Help Desk Office Hour. My name is Ami Sherson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the project manager at Arts Business Collaborative. We're super excited to have everyone here today and have a little bit of a spiel before we start. We're currently at week 6 of the ABC Help Desk program, which is really exciting. And we have 2 more weeks. And the Help Desk was designed to provide strategy, organizational recovery webinars, office hours, and individualized pro bono consulting for organizations and small businesses led by and serving communities of color. This office hour is being recorded and will be posted on the Arts Business Collaborative YouTube channel by next week. If you'd like your question or portion to not be recorded or public, please let me know and I can remove it from the recording. This office hour is a lot more casual compared to our standard webinar, and we want everyone to engage and ask questions as they feel comfortable. So please feel free to unmute yourself to share out questions, thoughts, or put them in the chat, whatever feels most authentic to you. This year's Help Desk is brought to you with thanks to the M&T Charitable Foundation, Hill Capital Partners, Amalgamated Bank, and Empire State Development Corporation. If you're interested in applying for the ESD Small Business Pandemic Relief Grants, ABC provides free technical support. You can learn more information and connect with us by either private messaging myself or emailing services@artsbusinesscollaborative.org. And with that, I'm really excited to pass things off to Erika Pettersen and Dianne Walsh, who will be leading this office hour on research for strategy and research building. Thank you so much, both.
Thanks so much for that intro, Ami. We can start off by introducing ourselves. So I can start. I'm the Research and Development Strategist at Arts Business Collaborative, specifically with the Rising Tides Research Institute. And I bring experience, both academic experience and professional experience. I've been in the nonprofit sector for just under a decade, working with primarily young nonprofits, led by people of color and using the arts to empower local communities. And so in addition to that experience, on a professional level, I also have a master's in Latin American Studies from Tulane University. So really incorporating various disciplines like anthropology, literature, art history, cultural studies, towards exploring ideas of identity and belonging. And so I'm really excited to bring together those two worlds in my work at Arts Business Collaborative and to use them as we explore research for strategy and resource building at this office hours. So, Dianne, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Dianne Walsh. I use she, her pronouns. I am relatively new to ABC, been with ABC for a little over 4 months now, working in an administrative assistant capacity with the Rising Tides Research Institute team. I also, for the last few years, have been working with a philanthropic foundation. And prior to that, I was living abroad in Scotland, where I received my degrees in socioanthropology and history of art. So sort of similar to Erika's background in terms of combining academic study in terms of cultural studies and history of art, and doing and practicing that in a more academic study. But now just great to be here and talking about research in terms of how to apply it within a nonprofit art space, because I think Eric and I were speaking about this before. People might not think that they're practicing research or investing in research on a large scale, but it is quite intuitive to people, and I think people do know how to practice it. It's just how to structure it in a way that is really effective for your organization. So with that being said, I guess we'll get started.
Yeah, and I thought, we thought like a fun way to start, especially since it's such an intimate group today, is to kind of get to know where you're all at. And so we thought it would be great if we could learn a little bit about each of you and your organizations, what brought you to today's session, and just really quickly what research means to you. There are no right answers. We just are interested in hearing where you're coming from, and that'll help us, situate how we can best assist all of you guys. So I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer themselves to start.
You can also write in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that.
I'll go first. Hi, I'm Grim. I use they them pronouns, and I'm with Grimalkin Records, and we're a mutual aid oriented, queer and trans led collective that makes priority to QT BIPOC artists. We provide support. We do physical releases, do promotion, and help with things like graphic design and like the whole release process without it costing anything for the artist. And then other supports, like we try to collaborate with other mutual aid organizations so we can refer folks for things that they need in their trying to build that network, like if they need mental health services or whatnot, so we can kind of build a network that way. And also we've done a little bit with workshops and education, but we really want to put a lot of focus into that at some point, being able to like provide Skillshare and that kind of thing. And yeah, and it started out as a passion project. I, I basically do most of the in and out. We are a collective, so there's things that we do like review album submissions together, but like the day in day out kind of stuff is like kind of me. Me. I'm doing all of this. So it is becoming very overwhelming. And my background is a special ed teacher and vocational counselor, and I was laid off in March 2020. So when that happened, I put all my focus into Grimalkin to try to make this a legitimate business. And so at some point, won't be able to keep going if we don't have funds to pay myself and other people, so we can keep growing and sustain. And we right in the process of becoming 501c3, thinking about fiscal sponsorship as an option because, like I said, it's so many things, and the counting and the taxes and all that stuff it's so much for one person to kind of handle. And we're working on the bylaws right now. So we became incorporated in the state of Virginia. I'm in Virginia. I happen to be in a very rural area, actually, in Virginia. And yeah, we're in that very in between. Who knows what's going to happen? And as far as like, I'm coming to all of these, ABCs of all the webinars and things I've been attending, has been just every one I've gone to, I've walked away with like, not only information that's helpful to know, but also kind of like a hopeful feeling too, because I just hearing Kat talk too about how she started the ABC and like in the short, really 2014, I think was what she said it started. It's really not that long. And like, look at what ABC is doing now. It makes me feel like, oh, maybe this is possible for us too. And that's really been great. And so, yeah, just trying to take in as much as I can because I really don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm winging it constantly. And I just really appreciate everybody who's, helping with this stuff. You're just learning so much. As far as research goes, yeah, it's hard for me to like think about that, but it would be great. I feel like it'll be really important for us to track how we've helped people like short-term, long-term. So maybe that is how I'm seeing research fitting in with the work we do, because that seems like it'd be extremely important to know if we're effective, how effective we've been, and like where we are shortfalling, I guess. Or yeah, so other than that, I'm not sure if what else I would say for research, but that it's important. I know that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Grim. We really appreciate you coming back again. Jaslyn, I know you put something in the chat, but if you'd like to unmute yourself and share, that's okay too. If not, I can read it from the chat as well. I'm gonna, can't unmute. Oh no, 1 second. At the moment, okay. I'm clicking ask to unmute right now. Do you see anything? For now, I can read it from the chat. And once you unmute, you can elaborate a little bit more. But Jocelyn, she says, hi, I lead a Black and femme-led digital arts and research collective. Ooh, very nice research collective. We mostly do curatorial art design and technology and research. And she also put her handles in the chat box as well and website. And so we can link that out as well. So thank you so much for sharing. Melissa, if you would like to unmute yourself or put in the chat.
Hi, my name is Melissa. You guys know. So I am attending this because I have two projects that I'm working on, but the mainly there's this one. It's called A2A Media, which is the logo that is showing up here right now. It is basically it was a freelance business that I started in New York City 7 years ago, that eventually I turned it into a more legitimate business service over the years, which is specialized for providing digital media content production, digital media production for dance nonprofits. But then, over the years, I've been doing a lot of stuff for like music artists and other people as well. So the whole thing that is happening with this organism is that I am trying to turn it into a 501c3, because over the years, I work with artists and smaller nonprofits. Some have a good budget, but a lot of them are smaller and independent. And also I work with a lot of artists, a lot of um, people of color, artists that doesn't have, that doesn't have a budget. So a lot of the work that I do is for free sometimes, even though I have paid clients. So I just wanted to uh, self-fund so that I can focus more on providing the service for people who can't afford it, while continuing to operate as a commercial service, which I know that I can do that in the 501c3. So I do I offer cinematography, photography, graphic design, web design, marketing, branding, and creative direction. I mostly also in a role of a creative director, project manager, social media strategist, and assistant film director. And so there's all these things that I do for different projects and organizations. And I think in in terms of research, I missed the beginning of it, but I think how I have been I haven't have like a substantial system to track, but mostly all of the people that I worked with started out really small. Let's say I joined, there was a a nonprofit that has a big festival in New York, and they start out really small. And after I joined them and worked on their marketing, they have gotten more of this, like more sponsorships, more high level, sponsorships like American Express and like Holiday Inn, and so I've helped and it's the same for individual artists as well. Like the work that I've done with them and have helped them reach a bigger platform, and then they can, then they move on to work with bigger companies and do bigger things. So so that's, I guess, where and the research comes from. And also, I've been studying, what I offer, and I also on the other end um, offer guided meditation and Reiki and spirituality, like teachings, and I teach yoga and Kundalini yoga, and I host rituals. So I've been trying to combine this into this in where I can offer it within my service as well. Let's say for a dance film that I was doing upstate last year. I was, saging the crew and doing guided meditation, doing rituals with them to help with, their creative process. So there's also that aspect. And I feel like those have been in there, but I just haven't quite found the language to put it in there because I'm scared that people are gonna feel like it's weird. So right now I just am gearing more towards, right now I changed the branding a little bit. So I'm calling it subsidized digital media service uh, for art, healing, and activism. So which is what my niche is people that I've been working with are interested in those type of things and services. And essentially I'm making art for artists because it's hard to work with just a normal person sometimes if you're an artist. So like I'm making art for an artist. So that's basically what I do. And I'm trying to find out as much as possible how I can self-fund because it hasn't been very sustainable. A lot of the, I do a lot of work for my portfolio, let's say, but it's, it's a lot of free work. And each time I get a paid job, I get paid really well, but it's not, I need extra help for sure to continue to run it healthily.
Thank you everyone for sharing. I think this gives great context, and I'll now pass it off to Diane and Erika.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's really helpful in terms of helping us think about how to best help you guys, even if you don't have specific questions top of mind. I'm sure Diane will have more to add to this, but what I was hearing a lot of was concerns around fundraising and perhaps how research can inform fundraising, and related to that, tracking long-term and short-term outcomes, thinking about visibility and marketing, and highlighting basically your kind of unique value proposition. We can talk a little bit more about that as the hour unfolds. But Dan, I don't know if you have more to add there, but I know we also wanted to kind of just talk about like what research is and let that lead into more of a discussion. So Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think another question that we were wondering from you all was what does research mean to you, and how do you understand it as being a part of your work? And so I think we kind of got a understanding of how you hope research can fit in for your growth and overall sustainability of your organization. So I think that's helpful for us. Once again, going back to Erika and like the kind of the themes that we pulled out in terms of tracking was a big thing. And so I guess we wanted to just start with kind of exploring how we think about research. And I mean, very basically, we define research about being a systematic investigation to reach new conclusions, but not even to reach new conclusions, to also start continued investigation. So continued learning, continued exploration. What does one question, how does that lead into another question, and thinking about it from both quantitative and qualitative data. And so also going into this session, research is such a broad topic. It can mean so much in terms of active research and as a product. And so we wanted to specifically think about how to utilize research for resource building and for strategizing so that it can be really a tool to really help you all. And just to start thinking about how certain methodologies can help structure your thinking and how to move forward and grow from this. And so another caveat is that we know that most organizations don't have the resources or the capacity to have their own research arm like ABC does. We know that it is a rarity for smaller organizations. So just once again, highlighting how research, it doesn't have to be this its own department with academics, but how anybody can practice research and how it can be useful for people. And so, yeah, so that kind of goes into how I think a big thing that people say is in terms of like thinking about marketing campaigns or audience engagement. There's kind of this debate over whether you should be strategizing on this like gut instinct on what you think people want and need. But and I don't think it's mutually exclusive, but in order to strategize, you do have to have empirical data. You need to have data on how, like, what are the trends, how to break down the trends, and how to be as responsive as possible to what's happening to your immediate, what the needs and wants are of your immediate community, and also on a local, national scale as well. So I think that kind of goes into what we might be discussing in terms of like landscape analysis and market research and market mapping, and some of the methodologies we can help that can be utilized for tracking some of the issues that, or some of the topics that you guys want to discuss. So Erika, you want to?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that. Yeah. So yeah, just as we mentioned earlier, there are definitely some themes that emerge in terms of what you all are interested in gaining from research. And so I'm wondering if any of you want to take a crack at just throwing out a question, because research is all about answering questions ultimately. And so is there a core issue around strategy and resource building that you're trying to solve? And so, like, more specifically, what is a crucial question that you're trying to answer? And so I think everyone who's contributed gestured at certain questions, but maybe if someone wants to take a stab at like articulating one, point blank.
I wanna ask this question where, I'm trying to find out. I mean, obviously, in my personal experience, I experience as the truth that, my service is needed at a subsidized rate. But how do I go about prove, like, finding the evidence, or through research, or how do I? Is it like through a survey, or like should I throw out a survey, or and also, there's not a lot of nonprofit digital media service. Usually it's commercial. So I know that there's not a lot out there. The only organization that I know that do similar things, DCTV, which is in the Tribeca area in Manhattan. And so I haven't come across a lot of people like that wants to do what I do, or in that way. So how do you go about researching things that are innovative, let's say, or like that I feel like I haven't found like another person doing this, or combining like holistic healing into their service, or how do I go about things like that?
That's a really great question. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure everyone else on this call has probably a similar question for their own organizations. And so, there's a lot that can go into really articulating the value that you offer as a nonprofit or as an organization or as a group. And so, that can be done from a lot of different angles. You were asking about like doing a survey. You also gestured at what I think would probably be the most important place to start, is to really understand where you fit in the larger landscape of similar services or similar organizations. And it sounds like you've done some research based on your assertion that like you're one of the few groups that offer what you offer specifically. But I think it would be great to talk about a specific tool that you can use to flesh that out more concretely, so that you can really kind of like prove that to people in a very direct way. And so one really great tool for achieving that is called a landscape analysis, or some people call it a competitive analysis. And it's really just a way for you to see for yourself and understand for yourself where you fit within a sea of organizations, and really kind of understanding who else is out there that's doing what you do, and kind of figuring out who your direct, one way to put it is competitors, but another way to put it is potential collaborators. They could be one or the other. But the way to kind of start a landscape analysis, and it sounds like you're kind of well on your way because it sounds like you've done your own research, is to really kind of think about who else is out there. And you want to think about it kind of through three different lenses. So one lens that you seem very clear about is programming, like what kind of programming you offer. And so thinking about other entities that offer similar, if not the same, similar types of programs and services. And then you can also think about it through the lens of who your audience is, thinking about who else serves the audiences that you serve. And then also thinking about geography, where you're implementing your services. And so keeping those three kind of buckets in mind, you can pull together a really healthy list of other entities that might not be doing exactly what you do, but are entities that you can compare yourself to and really get like a sense of where you fit amongst those different entities. And so in terms of doing that research, it sounds to me like you've done some of that research, and maybe you want to say how you've kind of determined you're one of the few entities doing what you do.
I just Googled. I Googled and I try to search keywords, and I try to find like similar people.
Yeah, that's great. And that's like an excellent starting point, and probably like it sounds like you're pretty far along in the process. And then you also mentioned the possibility of surveying stakeholders, which I also think is a great idea in terms of learning about who else they've turned to in the past for similar services. And yeah, Diane, I don't know if you have thoughts about like surveying and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think from a qualitative point of view, I think surveying is also a really great way of just really understanding people's interaction with your programming, your services, your organization, their opinions and feelings about it, and how to, as opposed to just only relying on quantitative data, how to really understand. Because if you're also dealing with healing services, there's a lot there in terms of how people are engaging with that work, in terms of like the embodiment and the motive. And I think also kind of going back to thinking about landscape analysis, I put in the chat just a couple of resources. One is from Bridgespan. It's a very, very comprehensive and very easily readable resources about the methodology of landscape analysis, and kind of some very basic steps that you can follow. And then also SMU Data Arts has free analytic reporting that you can do. You can just sign up for a free account, and you're able to track your organization within the sector as well, for your financial and operational health. So those are just a couple of free things that can help you start thinking about how to start thinking about it in terms of broader questions about what Erika was saying about like function, scope, geography, but then also have a tool readily available for you all to use in terms of reporting. And also, I had another thought. I had another point, but Yeah, and I think also I think just really having clarity on your mission and vision is really helpful in terms of how you strategize from there. How do you how you are situated in terms of your other competitors, collaborators. So I think, yeah, having a lot of clarity on that is helpful.
For sure. And I'm not sure if I saw all the links that you shared, Diane, but I shared this one in case you didn't share it already. This is an article that talks about competitive positioning, but it's ultimately what we're talking about when we talk about a landscape analysis. And so, it breaks down different stages in doing a landscape analysis. So we talked about this first stage of really identifying other organizations that offer similar products, or reaching similar customers and reaching similar geographies. And so, doing that basic work, I think it's a healthy exercise to kind of put together a list of, say, like 25 to 30 other entities that, again, like, they're not going to do exactly what you're doing, because it actually sounds like you're all doing very unique things, but it's going to give you a sense of how to differentiate yourself from other entities that are out there. And then once you kind of take a look at that list, it will help you to then kind of think about, okay, like, what is it that makes my work distinct? And you can do that by thinking about the different services or programs that you offer. So, for example, I put together like an analysis of different theaters, or film offering services in New York City, and also like online. And so, in thinking about how to compare those, I saw like membership loyalty programs as one particular offering or service that some of those entities offered and some didn't. Other ones offered like curated film series or filmmaker support, or they had a physical location with a theater, but others were completely remote. Film streaming remotely as an option. Thinking about cost structure, how much do you require individuals to pay for your services, and kind of seeing seeing what the competition offers and where you fit within that lens. And then just other kinds of programming and events that you can kind of distill to compare yourselves in very specific ways to other organizations that are out there. And through that process, you can really determine how unique you are in the field. And that's going to help you express your worth not only to potential stakeholders, but also to funders, which is like what I'm hearing a lot of people very interested in. And, what can be difficult about running a nonprofit is that you have to think about not only the customers, beneficiaries, audience members, whatever you want to call that subset, oftentimes serving those individuals, that you're not going to get the total income that you need to sustain yourself as an organization. So you also have to think about the other side of the equation at the same time, the funders. And so in that way, like, any nonprofit is ultimately at least a two-sided, if not more, market enterprise. So having to think about how you're selling yourself, not only to the individuals that you're aiming to serve, but also to the funders that you're hoping to attract funding from. So landscape analysis really helps you really get specific about your work and articulating that work to multiple audiences. So maybe we can pause there and see if anyone has follow-up questions, thoughts.
I actually have a question. But I want to, if Nancy, Grim, Melissa, or Justin want questions.
Are you able to unmute yourself?
think Jaslyn will mostly be active in the chat.
Okay.
Well, I guess I had a question for Graham, because you work in mutual aid. I was kind of wondering how you're thinking about funding, working with other mutual aid groups, and what your process has been like in terms of that. How, if you're working collectively to keep resources together, or yeah, just how you're thinking about it, because I guess thinking about it in terms of like competitors, it obviously isn't the language that you want to be using, and just how you're thinking about these things as well.
Yeah, or do you mean like how we've been trying to come up with funds so far, or?
Yeah, I think how you've been, and also how you're thinking about it going forward.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of things like, well, we had some changes along the way too, because when it was like a passion project, when I was working full time, like I was actually investing just like my own free money into things like basically into, paying for much of the releases and also giving like the artists copies for themselves and things like that, or like if our, but I would do like fundraising online to like just sort of like make graphics and be like, we're raising money for something. But that had to shift to that more. Like, so as soon as I was laid off, I didn't have income anymore. So we had to change a few things. So we used to give like 100% of digital sales to artists. And what we did instead, like we used to charge $8. So we raised it to 10. And so that, because the platform we use also takes a small percent. But then we started taking 25%. Of course, we like talked with all of our collective and things about it. But basically, by raising it $2 and taking 25% from digital, that enabled us to basically like I did not have to put any more of my personal money in because I didn't have any more to keep us moving forward with making releases. And then our tape releases, artists will donate, like they'll choose like where they want it to go, either to an individual in their community, or like another mutual aid organization, grassroots organization that's doing work. And we started taking a little bit of a percent from that to cover costs and stuff like that. So that got us to a point where we're sustaining that part of it. But then things like having to be able to give artists their copies and so forth. We just fundraise every month. We're always fundraising online, basically, and like as many people as we can get to share that, like, and letting people know like this is what it's covering, and then like try to give updates like we need $33 more, like we've gotten this far, and like we just constantly doing that online. And we've been also trying to build our Patreon. We have like about 40 some patrons on Patreon, so that has also helped us keep kind of. And then whenever an artist has a need, whether it's like it's like there's so many different things. It could be like in one case somebody was going to get evicted if they did not come up with this money, or in another situation like maybe somebody's trying to get their top surgery done, or or in another situation somebody's they need a mic so they can record at home. So when we have things like that come up, we usually, all we've been able to do right now is just kind of like put out a call for that and constantly grind that online. And before the pandemic, we would have benefit shows, but kind of trying to navigate that online. It's really hard making money from shows online. So that's kind of hasn't been very fruitful, like the online show thing, but maybe when things get back up and running again, it's safe. I'm considering if a place will do Vax only with cards, that I will consider perhaps doing in person again. I'm just really leery about that whole situation. But yeah, fun. So so I guess I'm foreseeing in the future, I would love it if eventually like we could actually get funding, not just to cover staff and labor and like programs we want to do, but also have like the more of that ability to like give out, to have more of a flow of money that we can give to certain things. Like if people come to us with a certain need, we can have it, you know, like to give them, and without it being too much of a complicated process either, you know, like especially when it's folks we know, you know, you don't have to fill out some long application and write a dissertation why you think you should get the money. Like we don't really want it to be like that, which does seem to be a lot of how grants and stuff like that work. So we want it to not be like that, and hopefully we'll get there, but I feel like that's so far in the future for us, and right now we're just grinding away at like, oh, we have to cover fees too for becoming 501c3. So we're like, right now we're raising money for that, we're raising money for someone to have a mic, and we're raising money for tapes and lace for our October artists and our November artists. So it's a bit overwhelming because it's like, you know, you get maybe $50 every few weeks. It's just, and then I feel like I'm constantly hitting up the same community of folks who don't have money. You know, like we're like, I feel like we are not tapping in. Like I know there's got to be, I keep saying this to myself, there's got to be like wealthy queer people out there who, if they knew what we were doing, they would want to support our work. How do I find those people? And I've gotten some tips like, oh, well, like look at the donors who give to HRC, or look at the donors. And then, but still, like, I have, you know, it's a lot too for one person to take on too. I don't know if I answered your your question, but
No, I think that was
any advice for me?
Yeah, no, I think because I think this kind of also leads into Justin's question about if anybody hasn't seen on how to seek funders who align with your mission and values, in the process of reaching out to them and building that relationship. So that was I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just thinking about your mutual aid work and how you thought about working with other mutual aids and the distribution of funds and things like that. That was just kind of my thinking around that.
Yeah, and you know, bringing up the kind of tension between terms like competitor and collaborator and that kind of thing. And I think in the nonprofit space, it is the reality is that there are competitors, but the nonprofit space also opens up a lot of avenues for collaboration as well. And so in responding to both Jocelyn's question and Nancy's questions or thoughts on fundraising, I think like going back to the landscape analysis is a really useful tool, because when you know what other entities are out there like you, that's a really valuable data set of information to have, because that you can do with that. And so, you know, on the one hand, you can understand your competitive advantage, but then on the other hand, you can think about avenues for collaboration or possible synergies. It seems like, Nancy, you might have done a little bit of what I'm about to suggest, but looking at organizations that do similar work and kind of seeing who's funding them. And that could be, you know, on the individual donor level, but it can also be on the larger foundation, corporate, government level. And in the spirit of collaboration, you know, not only just like jotting down what those various funding entities are, but maybe reaching out to some of those organizations and trying to develop a relationship with those organizations and think about collaborative funding strategies, thinking about possibly putting forward proposals together and collaborating on proposals. But maybe it's just as simple as getting an introduction from someone who's also doing similar work and believes in the work that you're doing. So I think that's a really potent avenue. And then you can do kind of similar things in this more grassroots space that you're talking about, Nancy, where, you know, mutual aid generally tends to be a lot of individual donors giving. But you know, research in that sense can look like really kind of taking time to connect with people who have given to your organization, especially those who have maybe given at higher levels. So really doing an analysis of what people have been giving, and, you know, picking out key individuals who seem to maybe have high net worth or have like donated on a regular basis, who have shown like commitment in other ways, and scheduling time to kind of just sit and talk with those people and brainstorm around how you can work together to fundraise or identify new donors and that kind of thing. So I hope some of those ideas are helpful.
And I have a quick thought before I go to Jeslin's question. I will also preface this by saying that a lot of my research experience is from a programmatic lens, and I wouldn't even say research experience at that point, right? So it's like a lot of the work that I do within how I utilize research is like being able to look at data and also being able to see like and track the impact of my programs or the impact of an organization. So I think it might be also interesting for you to be able to maybe have like pre or post surveys, or being able to track like the impact that by people's record sales are able to contribute to this many mutual aid organizations, or this is what we're able to do, like having qualitative and quantitative. That will also be really great when you apply for different grants as well, of being able to showcase like, this is the amount of people that we were able to support. This is what we can do with even more funding. So I don't know if Erika or Dianne, you want to talk a little bit more about like data and research from a programmatic end. Pass it off to you.
Yeah. So those are really key avenues for communicating what you're offering stakeholders themselves, and of course funders, as Ami is discussing. And so I'm going to go back to the landscape analysis. It's a really great tool, again, for just really being able to define what it is you're offering in relationship to other entities out there. And so not only being clear about the different metrics and indicators that you're using, those are all, big buzzwords in the nonprofit industry, but basically just, being able to articulate where your audience or where your stakeholders were before they were introduced to your services, and where they're at after they've been introduced to your services. But being able to not only articulate that arc, but being able to articulate that arc within the context of what other entities are doing. And that can help you really specify why you're doing it the best, or why you're doing it for a population that isn't getting that service from other entities. So really allowing you to articulate what it is you're offering in a very specific and unique way. And so, after this office hours, we can try and share some more resources around ways to do that. But, one of the first things that comes to mind is like simply putting together a unique value proposition statement that really sets you apart from other organizations, and that can kind of also guide what it is that you want to track in order to like really fully articulate the value of your organization.
And I think just another thing to add in terms of a landscape analysis, but also like SWOT analysis. So that's an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses are looking at internal factors, whereas opportunities and threats are looking at external. So thanks, Alan. So internal, sort of thinking about like what is the language you're using in your marketing, or not, sorry, in your marketing, but in your programming, what actually even is your programming, and thinking about your staff, thinking about various things like that. And then external, in terms of opportunities and threats, thinking about, like current policies, current political climate, current policy making, environmental factors, thinking about the populations around you, whether they're aging, certain, so demographics analysis, thinking about housing, income, and so just various things like that, and how there can be, once again, how your organization is situated. And Ami has also said he's heard of keep, start, and stop used in conjunction, which can be helpful when brainstorming. So another little tool to help with your thinking about your organization and your group and collective.
Thank you so much both for expanding on that. I know that we have about 9 minutes left of this, and so to make sure that we hit everyone's questions. And so we have a question in the chat from Jaslyn. She says, on the topic of funders, do you have advice on researching and finding funders who align with your mission and values? What does the process look like to approach funders once you find them?
Yeah, so I responded to that a little bit earlier in terms of, collaborating and reaching out to others in the field that do similar work and collaborating on possible funding opportunities and using those relationships as kind of entry points for warm contact, warm leads with foundations, corporations, and other funding entities. But sometimes you do kind of have to go cold. You really should try and keep abreast of just what is going on in the nonprofit sector writ large, and just trying to sign up for basically newsletters for any foundations or corporate entities they're giving programs, to be kept abreast of open calls. Those are kind of great entry points when you don't have a lot of warm contacts. Yeah, really signing up for newsletters, and then also signing up for other kinds of kind of information outlets that provide information on trends in the sector writ large. So we compiled a list of different sources that are useful. You might have heard of some of them. One of our favorites is Nonprofit AF. That's a great one. All of us in the room are in the arts, so NEA Research, that's another great tool to stay abreast of. There's Nonprofit Quarterly, Nonprofit Finance Funds, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, Stanford Social Innovation Review. Those are all great sources to kind of keep you in the loop in terms of what's going on in the sector and what opportunities out there exist. And then there are various search engines, that some of which you have to pay for, some of which you don't, but the foundation directory is one good, generally free source, I believe. I can't keep track of whether or not people are charging these days, but I believe Foundation Directory is a free source where you can look up different funding entities, especially foundations. So we can send more of these resources your way. I know it was a lot to just kind of hear all that, but I hope that was helpful in fleshing out an answer to your question, Jessalyn.
Thank you so much for sharing those resources, Erika and Dianne. One thing that I also want to note is Facebook can be really helpful. There's some really amazing Facebook pages along with more official websites and newsletters. But Arts Administrators of Color is a really great place to find funding opportunities. I think Nonprofit AF actually has a Facebook page called Nonprofit Happy Hour. There's binders full of people of color in the art world. Like, there's a bunch of them that I'll put in the chat that are really great resources and kind of sharing and receiving information. And so as we wrap up this conversation, thank you everyone for joining us today. Dianne and Erika, for really making research interesting and fun. It already is, but you are making it so approachable and being able to find those intersections for each individual. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness. And so as we wrap up, I want to ask both of you if there's 3 takeaways that our audience can take from this conversation or about research in general, like a trailer version, what would it be?
That you're already doing it. that honestly, like, you all sound like you're doing so much already. But I think it's just about it sounds like just how to figure out the direction that makes sense for your organization, and how to yeah, how to just like be a little bit more strategic about it. So it's not like another thing that you have to add to your responsibility list. It's like another thing that you just have to do whenever you have time, but how to just yes, be strategic and how you find the value in it. And hopefully when you're strategic about it, you will see value as an outcome and see the results and be a productive one for your organization. But you're definitely all doing research already. And it's yeah, that you're all great.
100%. I'd love to echo that. And then also just thinking about the fact that you're all moving in the right direction, as Dianne is saying, and research, it's really about like taking time to stop and reflect. And that can be really hard to do when you're running a nonprofit, because oftentimes nonprofits are founded out of just like seeing a dire need and wanting to respond as quickly and swiftly as possible to a need in your community. And so it can get really easy to get carried away and just like action, action, action without any stopping and thinking and really assessing, you know, strategy and best avenues forward. And so it's really amazing that all of you took the time, even just to come to this office hours today, to really think about the direction of your organizations and really, it sounds to me like you're already on the paths of being able to be reflective, and that's going to really be instrumental in the long run, because taking that time to strategize is going to make sure you don't burn out because you haven't been able to like plan in ways that ensure that you're not overextending yourself. So yeah, just I'm really excited that you all were here today and wish all of you the best of luck as you move forward. And I hope that we can stay in touch, and we'll definitely be sharing resources that kind of add to this conversation that you can take away with you.
Just what Erika said, that was so good, so smart. But yeah, Ami, if you want to share our emails,
Yeah, I was just about to ask.
Okay, great.
Yeah, how can people stay connected with you if you have any questions?
Okay, I'll go first. My email is Dianne, Dianne at artsbusinesscollaborative.org.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine is Erika with a K, no C, at artsbusinesscollaborative.org.
Thank you both so much. And if you have any questions, please email Dianne or Erika or myself. Thank you so much for joining us again for another office hour session. We really appreciate you both. This was such an amazing, really intentionally thoughtful session, just like really great. I feel like for me, at least, like research can feel very scary, but in this conversation, I'm like, oh, we already have those skills. Like this is so approachable. So thank you so much for bringing that light in. And so if you would like to sign up for the Help Desk newsletter, learn more about sessions to come or additional resources such as technical assistance for the ESD grant, you can visit us online. I just want to make another note that we are moving on to week 7 of the Help Desk, which is really exciting, but that also means that we're about to close in 2 weeks. So if there's other sessions that you want to check out, please come to them. And if you want to learn more about research and strategy, you're in luck. Our next webinar is November 3rd at 3 p.m. EST with our fantastic Dr. Carolyn Renee Potts, as well as Veronique Ignace, on research strategy, action, strengthening foundations, visioning for the future. Pardon me, this will be at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, November 3rd. So we hope that you're able to join us. I'll put it in the chat. Carolyn and Veronique are absolutely incredible. So we think that you'll be able to learn even more about research. So thank you everyone again, and have a great day. Bye.